Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing Game 11 of the regular season between the San Jose Sharks and the Pittsburgh Penguins, in which the Sharks have lost 10-2. Yes, that is right. For the second straight game, the Sharks have given up double-digit goals, an occurrence that happens perhaps once per year amongst the 32 NHL teams. The Sharks have managed to do it twice in just an 11-game regular season and consecutively, something that has not happened in close to 60 years in the NHL, dating back to 1965, which just goes to show that indeed the Sharks are historically a very bad team. And here's the thing, coming into this season, many NHL pundits, in fact most NHL pundits and analysts, predicted the San Jose Sharks to be the last place team, and yet I don't think anybody was expecting this abysmal of a performance from the San Jose Sharks, especially not in the modern NHL era, where there are a lot more regulations put into place to try to arbitrarily create parity between the best and the worst teams in the league. There's the salary cap and the salary floor, the NHL entry draft. All of these factors put together makes it so that theoretically any given team can win on any given night, and yet that cliche, the oldest cliche here, seems to at this point be broken because the San Jose Sharks cannot win on any given night, clearly, with the performances that they are putting up through these first 11 games. And in a vacuum, the game here tonight, the 10-2 loss to the Penguins, is actually a step above the game a couple of days ago against the Vancouver Canucks. The Sharks managed 2 goals here tonight, which doubles up on their pitiful 1 goal per game average. And in the first period, even though the Sharks did fall behind 2-0, they were relatively competitive. They looked okay in that opening frame. And yet when you put this game into the context of this season, this one is actually more embarrassing than the game 2 days ago, which seemingly was the rock bottom early on in this regular season, and yet somehow the Sharks have found an even lower place to fall with the performance here tonight. Now, why is that? Well, usually when a team gets blown out, it'll be a wake-up call for every single player on the ice. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they will immediately respond with a win in the next game, but they will usually look a lot better going into the following one. Let's take a look at the first time the Sharks were blown out this season by the Tampa Bay Lightning. A 6-0 loss was a really, really ugly loss. The next game, the Sharks did still get shut out, so clearly not really that much of a better performance, but it was only a 3-0 loss. It looked a lot closer on the scoreboard. The Sharks played definitely better, and it was a game that was at the very least somewhat interesting to talk about. The fact that the Sharks players here could sustain the ugliest loss that any of them really, at least in a vacuum, have ever been a part of, and then in 2 days later sustain the exact same type of loss is just absolutely pathetic for every single player on the ice here tonight, and even more so for the coaching staff. In the previous review, I talked about how David Quinn was already on thin ice after the first few games of this season, and with that Vancouver game, that ice was beginning to crack. There are no more cracks in the ice after tonight because there is no more ice. It has broken from under David Quinn. He's now in the deep end. There's nothing left to stand on, and I would be exceptionally surprised if David Quinn was still behind the bench come the Tuesday game against the Philadelphia Flyers. It is absolutely unacceptable that an NHL team could lose a game 10-1 and then 2 days later lose a game 10-2. It's just unfathomable in today's NHL that this could ever happen, and there needs to be a certain level of accountability at this point for this team. Heads absolutely need to roll if you are Mike Grier. Yes, you designed a roster that was pretty much expected to lose games, absolutely, and it even is sustaining a couple of injuries to some of their better players at this point. But losing 2 games in a row with a grand total of 20 goals against just cannot, should not ever happen in the NHL. Never mind the San Jose Sharks. It should not happen to any of the 32 teams here. And so Once again, for the second straight night and for the first time in this channel's history, I will once again not be reviewing a game because, once again, there is nothing to talk about here tonight. All the players were bad, all the defensemen were bad, the goaltending was abysmal, and so that's pretty much it. The Sharks will indeed be back in action on Tuesday. Like I said, they'll be facing off against the Philadelphia Flyers, likely with a new coach behind the bench, because you cannot get away with another 3 days of David Quinn here, because how could you ever trust him to be able to get this team to rally together and do something in any given game if they can put up 2 games, absolute stinker performances like they have here tonight? Class dismissed.